Hello, Night Nation. Trace Trulco here. Welcome to the Sons of UCF Live. Boom! It is a game changer for the college football playoffs this Thursday, tracking two nights in the NCAA championships, and we are answering your questions in the Sons mailbag. Let us welcome in the Sons of UCF, Adam and UCF Mike. Gentlemen, how are you?
I'm all disoriented, Trace. My microphone is way too high. I can't get it any lower. It feels like it's covering most of my my upper face area.
You're just getting thrown off by my beautiful mustache I got here. Reminiscent of like Tom Selleck. I don't think anybody's had one nicer than this.
I mean, that was my first thought. I'm not going to lie to you. I did think, is that Tom Selleck on the show or is that Mike? It took me a minute to figure it out.
That sounds like a graphic that should appear on the screen. Tom Selleck, body double.
I grew one during the pandemic for like a couple months. I stuck with it. And now I'm just doing it to piss my wife off, basically. So.
That
seems like a really bad idea, though, no?
There's a Tom Selleck, yes or no? Yeah. Today is June 10th, a famous day in that it is Happy Birthday UCF number 58. Of course, UCF created back June of '63, known as FTU, would take some 5 years later before you'd have classes out in East Orlando. But today, the 58th birthday, and today, the College Football Playoff Working Group announced that they are expanding the playoffs, or that is their plan. There's some things that need to be worked out, but the news coming down late this afternoon. 6 conference champions, 6 at large, top 4 get byes, which means 5 through 12 will play in home campus stadium sites. They're still keeping the bowls, semi and quarterfinals to be played in those bowls. How that will work, not exactly sure. When you heard all of this come down, you got to think maybe, good for UCF and the AAC.
Well, let me caveat this. If it is as it's laid out so far, it certainly is a favorable idea for UCF. However, we all know full well that there will be changes. I feel like this is draft 1. This is part of a negotiation. Things will change here. And I'm not going to, I want to be a positive person, but here's the reality. We're UCF fans. The rug gets pulled out from under us all the time. I'm waiting for the wrinkle that we don't know about yet, where it can't be a school, north of, this area and all these other weird stipulations. And let's not forget, there's also, I believe, and Trace, fact check me on this, this is still a committee vote situation, right?
Yeah.
So we're still trusting these human beings that we don't trust to begin with to make this all make sense for us and make it make right. Now, if you're going to really do conference champions, that's not something that can be debated, so I'm okay with that. But I feel like while this is inherently a good thing and I want to really be happy and positive about this, I'm just waiting for that rug to get pulled out from under me.
That's us for being 20 years UCF fans, the old folks just waiting for the other shoe to drop. At first glance, yes, it looks like the best thing for us. The 6, they didn't just say 5, but 6 conference champions.
P6, Mike, P6.
Yeah.
And well, it's the 6 highest ranked conference champions too, right? So that's another good caveat.
Right. It's not guaranteed that we'll be in one of those 6 every year. I mean, there's a year maybe the Mountain West will get one, maybe the Conference USA, maybe the MAC. Who knows? But also, it's possible that more than one of those teams gets in. What if there's a big upset in one of these other conferences and knocking out some other teams? Then all heck breaks loose. More ways for us to get in is better. It's not a perfect system. I think for it to be fair for everybody, you're talking 16, you're talking 10 conference champions. You win your conference, you're in. We haven't got that far yet, but definitely a lot better than what it's been for the last forever.
Yeah, you're looking at a graphic now that shows what it might have looked like in previous seasons. Athletic Director Terry Mahadra at UCF quoted in the Orlando Sentinel saying, anytime you give more teams the opportunity to compete for a national championship on the field, it's great. So he, of course, most recently on that playoff committee. Matt Michelle saying that if that had been in place, you can tell from the graphic here, 2017 UCF, 2018 UCF, 2019 Memphis, 2020 Cincinnati, and Coastal Carolina. That would have been 5 from those conferences that would have made it. So on the surface, it's promising.
Well, let's also not forget this, and let's be realistic for a second. Outside of the top 6, which are voted on by the committee, right? They rank 7 through 25. Do we think they really care about 7 through 25? Are they really taking their time to slot those teams accordingly, or are they just kind of throwing that stuff together? So even though this graphic here would show you the options are available to us. If now all 25 or all 16, wherever that number is, becomes important, do we really think they're going to keep up the same seeding? I mean, I got to think that if you're in that room week after week, you're really just caring about the top 6, and everything else after that is just a rounding error. So when they have to actually do all of them, will that change things? I think that'll be interesting to figure out.
Yeah, last year's prime example, it shows Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina would have got in. But if it's the way that they're talking about doing it, I'm sure they would have found a way to make Coastal Carolina 13 or 16 or whatever it is to keep only one G5 team in there. It's all about the money. And, there's going to find plenty of ways to keep us down. That's what we're waiting for. This is just the part one. If it's still going to be in the committee's hands, anything's possible. I'm a little not pessimistic, but skeptical about how this whole thing's going to work out.
Yeah, I want to think it's good. Like, I agree with him. I want to think this is a good thing, but I just feel like I'm that guy who's looking over his shoulder, like, where's the the banana peel that's gonna like slip me up here and I'm gonna fall on my keister. Like, where's that coming from? I didn't think I'd say keister today, by the way.
No one did. Mike, you skeptical? The guy who says that all those 5 stars become 4 stars and 3 stars when they commit to UCF. Our friend, Commissioner Mike Oresco of the American Athletic Conference, he is buoyed by this. His quote released on social media: "This proposal, which treats all FBS conferences equally, has real merit. Under this plan, we would have made the playoff in 5 of the 7 years of the playoff area. It affirms our P6 positioning." It does seem to be playing into his hands. Couple of thoughts. I would say that it incentivizes Mike Oresco even more to pluck a Boise State out of the Mountain West and kill off any chance that conference might have of being one of those top 6. And for the players, they say that health and safety for their unpaid labor force, with this NIL being center stage with Congress and states like Florida adopting it, you've got players that could be playing 16 weeks, 17 weeks, wouldn't go into effect if they move forward with it until 2023, but you're looking at almost an NFL type season for these college amateur athletes.
I mean, first of all, what did we think Oresco was going to say, right? He's going to have to kowtow to this proposal because this, he's going to market this. I think I read someplace he got a contract extension. I don't know if that's affirmed yet.
I think they're working on that.
Working on an extension, right? So I think this is that entree to say, look what I've done for you guys. Let's keep me around. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the schedule plays out, of course. I mean, if there's talk of less bowl games, which frankly might not be a bad thing, getting rid of some of those lower tier bowls that no one really watches anyway, if you replace it with more meaningful games. I like the concept of having home games on campus, so first round games. I mean, you imagine the atmosphere, and let's be selfish for a second. Imagine the atmosphere of a bounce house and a first round game. Where we're playing in the college football playoff. There was one year we were, I think it was 18. We were 8-9, so we would have been the home team against Washington. Imagine the atmosphere in that year. I think that would be incredible too. So again, there's a lot of good you want to like about it. And Oresco is going to say, hey, look at this. It's all good news, because this is not a time for him to take a negative position, because that doesn't bode well for them. But I think there's a lot of things to be crossed off. And I just personally, again, I'm gonna say again, this is draft 1 in my opinion. I don't think anyone should suspect this is going to be the final proposal. I suspect there'll be plenty of different negotiations. TV contracts, how does that play into all this? Is ESPN re-up? Are they going to open that back up? I think there's many hurdles to cross. But at least the conversation is definitely down the driveway. Now, whether it gets pulled out and into the interstate, who knows?
That seeding is going to be very interesting. When you send the hands of the committee, yeah, it looks like now we would have been an 8 seed. But when that really matters, would they have made us the 9 and go on the road? Who knows? And what this is going to do with conferences, Notre Dame now is not in a conference. They are never going to get that first round bye. The way it's written right now, the top 4 conference winners are going to get that first round bye. That means Notre Dame doesn't get one. That means BYU's never going to get one. Do we add those Western teams to make our conference that much better than the Mountain West? That's one way to look at it, but also makes our path a little bit harder. BYU, if they join the Mountain West, does the Mountain West then come up to the level of the American? A lot of interesting things still to play.
Well, just 48 hours ago on my Twitter, I asked the premise, if they were to expand 8 or 12 teams, what do you think it'll be out of the gate? 75% said 12. Good friend of mine at Tom James Live said, bring on 64. He says 64. Who knows if it'll head that way. Let's get some reaction from a UCF alum who's taking a little break from the newsroom. He is Ryan Bass, current news anchor at 10 Tampa Bay, the CBS TV affiliate in Tampa. He drives the new Charge On newsletter, who said on his Twitter today at Rye_Bass, no school benefits more than UCF. Ryan, welcome into the Sons of UCF Live, and expand on that. How does this benefit UCF and the American?
First of all, fellas, I feel honored to be here. I appreciate you guys having me. Been a longtime fan of what you guys are doing. I love the content. I love the concept. And so thank you for having me here with you guys. But yeah, I am a proud UCF alum, and today's news should be a watershed moment for this program and for this university. Finally, boys, finally, we have an opportunity for an even playing field here. 2013, 2017, 2018 could have been the years where UCF had an opportunity to play against the big boys and earn a shot at an actual national championship. Now that day has come. This 12-team playoff model benefits UCF outside of Power 5 conference than any school in the country, because it's a program that has been on the cusp of being able to play and compete with the big boys of college football, the elites of college football, as I like to call them, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Clemsons, even the Miamis, the Florida States, and the Floridas. UCF can now be on that same playing field. And with a head coach like Gus Malzahn and the now NIL rules that NLI rules, the name and likeness rules that are going to be coming into fruition here, coming into play come July, UCF is going to be in the mix for a lot of really good players on the recruiting trail. Orlando obviously is a hotbed in one of the biggest states for recruiting in the country. So UCF is in a prime position now. And with Gus in charge, this news of now a 12-team playoff field, hopefully starting in 2023, but at least, and at the latest starting after the 2025 season, UCF is going to stand to benefit here. And I wouldn't be surprised if, within the next, 5 years to a decade, UCF is in the college football playoff and competing for a chance at a national championship.
Ryan, I graduated UCF in 2002. So I feel like I've been through these moments before where you feel like you're on the precipice of something and then the rug gets yanked out from under you. So color me a little skeptical still of how this will work out. Do you think there's any validity to my skepticism?
Maybe I haven't lived enough. Maybe I haven't been around since 2002, like you. I came in 2007. We dropped the Golden. We debuted a new football stadium, a new basketball arena. Things have obviously been on the up and up since then. We had a double-digit season my freshman year. Went to a bowl game. Had the second leading rusher in college football history at that time. So I've been spoiled, ever since I came to UCF. So. Look, I understand the skepticism, and I understand it from a standpoint of it seems like the powers that be have always been working against UCF, whether it be, entering into a BCS conference. Remember, USF blocked UCF from being able to join a BCS conference, or whether it be with this 14 playoff or the College Football Playoff Committee not seeing UCF as playing a tough enough schedule to get into the playoffs. So look, maybe there's going to be some sort of conspiracy. You heard it here first. Conspiracy down the road where UCF's strength of schedule will be held against them from potentially being in this 12-team playoff. But how I see it is UCF stands to benefit here. And again, we're really early in this process. Like, this isn't signed, sealed, and delivered. We don't have a TV contract for this. This 12-team format has been floated out there. I think from the conversations that were had today among the committee and some of the commissioners, Bill Hancock, the executive director of the College Football Playoff, like, you heard some realistic conversations about why they're doing this. They want it to be more inclusive. They want the regular season to matter more. They want more of a footprint across the country to be included in some of the biggest games of the season. So yes, I understand the skepticism, but from where I stand and what I'm looking at, and from the optimism that I sense today from those leaders, of college football in the playoff, it seems to me like this system is being built to include teams like UCF, to also include Pac-12 teams, ACC teams like Penn State that we know aren't going to beat Ohio State year in and year out, but now have an opportunity to play in the playoff, potentially trip up a team like an Ohio State or a Clemson. UCF with this format, had this been in place, they would have made the playoff twice. They would have made it in 2017 and 2018. One of those years they would have faced Alabama, fifth-ranked Alabama in the first round. Could they have knocked off Alabama? Possibly. If you ask Mackenzie Milton, probably. So now we'll get the opportunity to actually see that on the field, and that's what's exciting to me. So maybe I'm being, I got a little recency bias here, but I don't have the same type of skepticism.
Even before today, there were rumors circulating of the American taking some teams from the West, Boise, Colorado State, maybe even BYU. Now, with the new playoff system, if this goes through, do you think we even need to do that? Or do those teams need the American more than we need them?
Wow. I think the American Conference has long been that Power Six. What I like to see some better, higher tier programs enter the mix of Boise State, if you will, from some of these other conferences. Sure. I think the American stands to benefit here. I think if the American has an opportunity to play in the playoff, you're going to see a better TV contract tied to this conference in the future. And I believe that's up for negotiation, in a few years. So I don't know if they necessarily need to expand. And I think this in itself might quell some of the talk of conference expansion in the future. Now, if you still see leagues like the Big 12, maybe the ACC getting shut out from having a multitude of teams in the playoff down the road, then maybe we reignite those conversations. But as it stands right now, again, had this system been in place, UCF would have made the playoffs in their two best years in program history. They would have made it in 2017, and they would have made it in 2018. So, I think looking at where it stands right now, UCF would have had an opportunity to play some of those bigger teams despite the lack of strength of schedule that they have. Now, does this help scheduling down the road? Like now that there's an opportunity to have 12 instead of 4? I think it does. I think the Florida States and the Floridas, the Clemsons, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Michigans will be more inclined to play a team like UCF, come down here, recruit down here, show in the state of Florida they can win in a recruiting hotbed like Orlando. And it gives UCF an opportunity to have some exposure playing those programs. So I think it's a win-win. I don't think expansion is necessary. Do I think it would help? Sure, absolutely. Why not add some of those better and higher tier programs to the conference? And you do that, obviously it could put you in an even better position. But I know we're down the road, and again, I think there's a level of excitement from the news today and from what was said today that really proves that there's an optimistic future here for UCF. And I see it within this conference. If they have to leave, if they elsewhere, great. But there is now a road. There is now a road map to a playoff for UCF, and it doesn't get any better than that.
The proposal floated today still keeps intact the bowl system. It's hard to understand how all of that will come together. You got to imagine that there are some bowls that just shake out of this system.
Yeah, and Brett McMurphy from Stadium was reporting that they are going to potentially cut, I think it was anywhere from 3 to 5 bowls from this. And I'd imagine it'd be some of the lower tier bowls. Look, I live here in Tampa. The Gasparilla Bowl hasn't necessarily been one that's been highly attended, or highly supported, if you will. Now, I know some of the directors behind it. They do a good job putting the event on, and I've had an enjoyable time going to the games where UCF's been featured here and covering them. But I think you see some bowls like that maybe don't have the support that could be on the chopping block. But look, we have an archaic system here, and I mean archaic in the sense I know it's only been around since 2014. But you look at every other sport in the NCAA, there's an opportunity to make the playoff. When you have a playoff system where 71, 73%, I can't remember the exact percentage now, is the same 4 teams in that playoff, you have a problem. You have a problem. The FCS has been doing this bracketed playoff format. It's bigger than 12 teams. I believe it's like 26 teams. They've been doing this for a while, and there's success with it. You have a legitimate national champion. You have a legitimate opportunity to play some of the big dogs in the sport, in that conference, in that subdivision. So, I truly see it as an opportunity here, as it stands, for UCF to benefit here. Some of the bowl games might be on the chopping block, but at least you won't have guaranteed first-round picks, subbing out of these games and sitting out because they don't want to get hurt. Have a shot at winning a championship. I think that benefits all. Games in September and games in November both matter now. You can lose an early season game in September and still have a shot at the playoffs. Same for a team that maybe goes undefeated all the way until the last game of the regular season and loses. You still have a shot, even if you have an off weekend. I think that benefits despite a potential for some bowls to go away.
Although he has not yet coached an actual game on the field, UCF fans are already kind of crowning Gus Malzahn as one of the best UCF coaches of all time. Let's wait till he plays the game, obviously. But can you, I guess, in your opinion, describe how important you think it is for UCF to have a Gus Malzahn on the sidelines, particularly with what's happening right now with the bowl stuff and championships and all that?
Yeah, I think it's really important, guys. And Gus has, since he's come in here, rejuvenated this program. And look, I was a a huge fan of Scott Frost. I covered UCF obviously a lot more closely during the Frost years with Knights 24/7 and 24/7 Sports. So I got to know staff really well. I got to know, the guys behind the scenes there. They did a really good job of putting this program in a position to succeed coming off a winless season after George O'Leary left. So, I've gotten to know the staff. Scott Frost's staff was excellent. I wasn't as close to the Heupel staff, but Heupel did do some really good things here. Obviously, 2 years there was a tapering off, but I think Gus is the perfect person to come in here and lead this program into the next wave of UCF football. And I don't necessarily mean from a wins and losses standpoint or a standpoint of competing for conference and potentially college football championships. I mean it from a standpoint of a new age of college athlete empowerment. We are now entering a phase, fellas, where we have never seen this before in college sports, where players can now profit off their likeness, where players can now get a certain type of exposure and raise their level of notoriety within a college program. That hasn't been, you haven't been able to do that before. Some players have done it on the side. Johnny Manziel admitted to that. He said he made a pretty good living signing autographs. Now you can have guys like Dylan Gabriel, who can be sponsored by a company, can be sponsored by a clothing brand, and can raise their profile while earning some money. And I think that now gives UCF an opportunity under Gus Malzahn, who has embraced this. They threw the Twitter handles on the back of the jersey during spring practice. Like, he is getting out on the forefront of this. And I think that's catching the attention of college football. So with the ability for players to profit off their likeness, with a coach like Gus Malzahn, who's been around the ringer, who doesn't seem like he's waiting for a better job. Like, he came here, obviously he got let go at Auburn, but I think he comes here and he's comfortable in Orlando. Doesn't have the same expectations, can lead a program, can recruit his guys. I think UCF lands their first 5-star recruit in program history under Gus Malzahn. I truly believe that. But I think part of the reason why they do that is because of this new player empowerment age where they can now profit off their likeness. UCF's at the forefront, and I guarantee you high school players, coaches are noticing that, and that's going to lead our program to be even better under the leadership of Gus.
All right, take your unbiased reporter hat off. Put your UCF fan hat on. What are your expectations for this season? What's a good season for UCF? Do we have to get to the conference championship? Do we have to win it? How many wins does it take to make you happy?
I honestly think I take my reporter hat off all the time. I think my bias hat sits squarely on this head of mine most of the time. You all see me on Twitter. You see how much I troll, fellas. This season, realistically, I think the defense is going to be better. For those that have followed my socials, at RY_Bass on Twitter, I haven't been shy about the fact that I wasn't pleased with the way Randy Shannon coached that defense in years past, especially this past season. I think the defense is going to be better despite losing some talent on that side of the football. But I truly believe this season, the expectations are 10-plus wins. I think they're in a position to win double-digit games this year. I really do. I think the schedule sets up nicely. I think they have some talent coming in. The ability for this one-time transfer rule where players are able to transfer and compete immediately, I think that's going to benefit UCF this year. Had they not had that in place, you could have probably seen somewhat of a repeat of last year where they're a 6-win program. But I think there was a lot of things that came into play. The pandemic, obviously. I think there were a lot of things surrounding that truly affected this football team maybe more than most. So, I truly expect 10 wins to be the low bar this year. I think they can exceed that potentially. They got some difficult games this year. Obviously, Boise State's not going to be easy. Louisville on the road is not going to be easy. Cincinnati is obviously difficult. I think USF is going to be better this year. I think this conference in general is going to be better this year. So I think 10 wins is the expectation. I think Gus feels that way. You have probably, arguably, definitely a top 10 quarterback in college football, under center. You got to take advantage of that. I think they have the weapons to do that. I think the running back room is pretty stacked. I think offensively they'll be okay. How good are they going to be on defense? That I think will determine whether or not UCF gets to 10 wins this year. But boys, I think that's the low bar, and I hope you guys agree.
Let's wrap up with this. You mentioned earlier you'd done work previously for Knights 24/7. Tell us about the Charge On newsletter, how folks can subscribe to that and keep up with content that you're pushing out.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys helping promote this, and I've been working on this for the last month and a half, and this really was inspired by what I felt was an opportunity to give UCF fans an avenue where they can catch up, on a lot of things regarding UCF athletics, and in a short time span. My goal is to have this newsletter in your inbox, and you can go to www.chargeontoday.com. That'll reroute you to the review website, which has the subscribe link to sign up. My goal to start is a bi-weekly newsletter that will arrive in your inbox, usually in the mornings, that will inform you. It'll be topical, right? I mean, one of the additions we did recently that I just now got to publicize was, Dylan Gabriel's draft stock and how he stacks up against the other group of 5 and Power 5 quarterbacks in college football. I did some, on UCF track in the most recent edition. The one that you could check out now on chargeontoday.com has to do with a lot of the news today regarding college football expansion. We talk baseball, we'll talk softball. We'll go through all the other sports. The primary focus will be football and basketball, especially when we get into the seasons. But I felt this was a true opportunity to connect with UCF fans and alums in a conversational way, to educate them. We'll talk about different topics. I analyzed the last decade in UCF football recently, where we kind of went through and saw the rise and why this was truly the best decade in football. So I'm excited about it. It's a cool project. It's something I'm doing on the side. Obviously, I'm still here, anchoring the news in Tampa Bay and representing the Knights proudly. But I do appreciate your guys' support, and I hope to feature you guys. Look, I hope we can work together. I'd love to share some of your podcasts and your pieces, and be able to collaborate with each other. I think it's whenever there's more UCF content, I think we're all in a better place, and I'm glad that I can continue to add to it with this latest chapter.
Sounds good. What's the top story tonight on 10 Tampa Bay?
Oh boy, CDC cruises. Governor DeSantis. We'll see if we can get the cruise industry here and get back on the water. We're talking about that. There's just a number of stories here in the state of Florida that we'll be addressing. So the news never stops here in Tampa Bay, fellas. As you know, it continues on. But I guarantee you, in the sports block coming up at 11:20, they'll be talking some expansion, and I'll be throwing UCF's name around in the background as I continue to boast that this is a banner day for the program, fellas.
It's good to have a night in cow country. Ryan Bass, UCF alum, current anchor, 10 Tampa Bay. You can find him at RY_Bass. Thanks for stopping by the Sons of UCF Live. Have a good rest of the night.
Guys, I appreciate it. If I can ever come on, if I can ever be a part of this exclusive fraternity and be able to share some of my fandom, please don't hesitate to ask. I had a lot of fun tonight. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Pretty good stuff right there. He's not shy of opinions, and he likes to poke our friends over in Tampa.
Yeah, man. Look, his optimism is fantastic. I think I hope to be there one day where he sees all green lights here, and hopefully that turns out true. That's actually the result I want. But I thought it was interesting his commentary about Malzahn and what he brings to UCF and his expectations. 10 wins. I think we'd all love 10 wins, and we've talked in previous shows about Gus's first loss. How many people are going to be out with pitchforks looking for his job? 10 wins would be great. 10 wins. He's after Johnny Dawkins. 10 wins would be a great season. Can we get there? I mean, I hope we do. But I'd be curious to see if everyone else has a bar at that same level where 10 and over is where their heads are at.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on which of the losses, right? I mean, if we're knocked out of the conference in early October like we were last year, then that's a big difference than if we lose a game at Louisville that doesn't really affect the season as much. So I predict a perfect season every year. I'm not going to tell you exactly how I'm feeling yet, but I'm feeling 15-0 right now. I'm feeling 15-0.
My crystal ball may not be working, but I kind of got that message. You might be predicting all the wins there. Full disclosure, in my tease yesterday, the Walk and Talk tease, anticipated former UCF quarterback Ryan Schneider joining us tonight. Had a conflict, promises me he'll be here next week, so I appreciate Ryan hopping on in short notice to talk a little bit about today's news. And today's news you saw from Coach Malzahn in his social media saying game changer, showing the number 12 jersey. I don't think he meant Quadri Jones. I think he meant expansion of the playoffs, but who knows for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Gus has to be excited, right? This is the perfect, time for this news to come out. Bounce House weekend coming up here in a few short days. We're going to have 2 5-star recruits on campus, which I think is probably a first in UCF history. So what better time for him to have this collection of high school talent in and around UCF to say, have you guys been watching the news lately? Did you see what they're doing with the playoff? You can now win a championship here, plus all this other cool stuff we have going on. Plus you're getting to play for me as a coach, plus my great coaching staff, plus we have a great quarterback, all this other stuff. What a perfect weekend for this to come out. I'm really curious to see if Gus can capitalize on it and get at least a verbal commit. I know nothing's official until they walk on campus, but can he capitalize right now? Because the timing is perfect with Bounce House weekend this weekend.
His hair's been on fire. He even brought Brandon Marshall back to campus this week. A lot of cool videos coming out of that. This thing is a game changer. If we get to 12, he can tell everybody with a straight face, we're going to be in the playoff every year. We're going to be contending for a spot every year. There's a spot for if we win our conference, we can play against Alabama, we can play against everybody, and we're going to beat those guys. So there's no more promising, hey, we may move to this conference in 3 years, we may do this while you're here. This is it. If these are kids that are going to be here in 2-3 years, that's their time.
And we've been talking about this, right, since the announcement of Terry Mohajir and then Gus Malzahn. There's a renewed energy within the program. You saw it with the amount of social media posts by a lot of excited, talented players. Coach T. Williams saying, I love all of this UCF down my feed, right? If you follow anyone UCF, you're seeing, especially the Brandon Helwigs and the Jason Beatties, all of this information that's flowing on their Twitter handles about the prospects. Bounce House Weekend, you mentioned it. Recruits coming in Friday, be here for the weekend. And high school prospect camps coming up over the next week or two. So a lot of energy around the program at the perfect time. We are less than 100 days till that season opener. It's a great time to be a Knight.
Yeah, Mike and I talked about it on the show this week. I mean, obviously, again, nothing's official till these kids step on campus. We've seen this 1,000 times before. Kids commit, change their mind last minute. So to get excited over verbal commitments is probably a tad foolish on our parts. But I think the energy that you're seeing, the fact that Gus is getting these kids to come on campus, and I don't know the difference here. Is it simply Gus? Is he just calling around? Is it relationships? But to get the kids to come on campus, that's really all you can ask for at this point, right? Get them on campus, get a chance to meet your coaching staff, see facilities, see the campus, and let the chips fall where they may. And he's getting us in the door of these things. Now, how soon will UCF fans expect for him to close the deal? I think that'll be interesting. Mario, I think half joking but half not joking, is asking how many 5 stars this year will be greater than the number of wins.
Whoa,
I think
hello.
there's gonna be an expectation at some point that he's reeling in the 5 stars. So how short is that 5-star leash for Gus? I think that's the thing, is things are ramping up really quickly. We are not the most patient fan base. So I'm curious to see how those two divergent things come together.
I think we can expect maybe to have the best recruiting class we've ever had. We're always somewhere in the 60s, maybe nationally. We can jump up to the 40s, make a big jump. We send a 5-star or 2. We're talking about top 25 class. That's a big difference. Another point that Ryan Bass brought up that I didn't even really think about, the scheduling. We talked about scheduling on the show this week. How is that going to change now? If we're in a conference that is regularly putting a team in the playoff, is that going to open up other people's minds about scheduling UCF?
Well, something else he mentioned was perhaps not the need to expand and add a Boise State, but remember, the AAC only has that waiver being down to 11 teams for a certain period of time. Does that get renewed? Do they have a championship game? Do they break back into divisions? Do they do a round-robin scheduling format? So there are still some things to be decided there. They've got a little bit more time on that, but they don't have an indefinite amount of time before they might have to make a decision about how to handle conference scheduling.
Other conferences may change the way they do things. If they see that they may, instead of dividing it into divisions, they may pick their 2 best teams of that season to play in the conference, and then that may change things. That may allow us to stay at 11. There's too many things that are still unanswered.
What, you mean you guys don't trust Mike Oresco to figure it all out? Yes. Oh, just me. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of decisions to be made, obviously. And I think you kind of have to understand what the landscape is. That's where some of this stuff has to play out first before you can jump to decisions. I think that's the thing that I don't want Oresco to do is, assume that this is a done deal, start making decisions, gravitating in that direction, and then something changes, something shifts. And now we're kind of positioned in a spot where, we can't get out of it. I think playing the slow game a little bit on this one probably would be the prudent move.
Yeah. I mean, conference changes have to be decided if it's going to be in effect for next year. I think July 1st is the deadline, right? Otherwise, you're waiting a whole other year. If you're talking about teams with Boise, BYU, anything like that. So that's going to get decided soon. If not, you kick down the road. This playoff thing is not going to be till at least 2023. So we have a couple years to play with here.
Just a thought, too, with a mention from Brett McMurphy of Stadium that there could be a chopping block for bowl games. The Americans' bowls are not the most attractive bowl games in the world. So you wonder if some of those that get chopped might be those AAC bowl tie-ins, because that has not progressed, right? They are locked out of big bowls. But I think it's a whole sea change in the bowls. And a lot of these bowl games are they're hanging on to an antiquated format. You know, I mean, what does it mean for a Rose Bowl that sort of demands that it wants to be certain teams and a certain profile? You know, how do you accommodate that with this format? And, you know, this 5 through 12, which is interesting, and hosting on the campus stadiums, you see this in the FCS model. But that means your top 4 that get the buys then don't end up hosting a game on campus. Are they going to really want to lose that revenue? So, as we've said, a lot of things in flux on this, but I still think if you're a UCF fan, even though skeptical, Adam and Mike, you may think that UCF will be on the outside looking in, there's still a lot more in to be considered here. And I've been a vocal critic of Mike Oresco, but he may have things may have collided for him in this that makes him come out, as we mentioned earlier, getting a contract extension. He may come out of this with a shinier profile than he had entered it.
Yeah, again, I put the graphic back on screen just so people can kind of visualize what this would mean based on the previous rankings. And I think, well, let's be transparent about one thing. First of all, some of these lower tier bowls, I mean, schools lose money when you get selected for those bowls, right? I mean, that's a tough financial decision. But I think the revenue model will be interesting to figure out, because obviously there's a split within the conference if somebody makes a bowl. So, you know, if in the 2018 year, UCF is an 8 seed. It's not a New Year's 6 bowl. There's a revenue models tied into that. I think, my good buddy, Mr. UCF Mike here, says one thing and one thing only every time we talk about this. Mike, you want to repeat it for everybody?
Follow the money.
Follow the money. So where does the money take you on these kind of things? I think that'll probably drive a lot of what this looks like, just from a model. But as much as, bowl season is always fun, and when we're in a bowl, you want to watch it. Again, some of those, bowls, to your point, Trace, are dreadful. Kids are sitting out these days because they don't want to risk getting injured. We saw the Boca Bowl, which, was a 4.5 hour just bloodbath of our lives that I could have done without. And since it was in Boca, it made sense. But does UCF lose money and that kind of stuff? I think it's about high time for a bit of a revolutionary change in how we do the postseason in college football.
Yeah. So instead of 6 or 8 teams from the American making a bowl game, you get 3 or 4. Make it more of a reward for the teams having a good season, the way it used to be. Instead of these 6-6 teams, we've seen teams under 500 get in bowl games the last few years. Who watches that? I don't watch any of these bowl games. And part of it is because I protest ESPN every year because of the whole college football playoff. But part of it is I just don't care about watching any of these teams. Give me a good team against a good team, and not some just also rans that I've never heard of.
Mike's been watching Magnum PI reruns, I think.
Here we go again with the Toms. In the opening of that show, wasn't he in one of those tank tops you like to wear? Wasn't there a shot of him like that, I think, perhaps? Does this mean your boycott will end if this changes? You're ready to jump on board this expanded playoff? You'll be dialed in to that Boca Bowl or other bowl matchups?
I'm still not going to watch the lesser bowls, but I'll be into the playoff for sure. If it's a more inclusive thing where we actually have a path, none of this crap that they were trying to give us before. Oh, there's a path to get in. No, I want to see what the actual path is. We win the conference we're in, then yeah, I'm going to be into it. Even on the years when we don't make it, I'll still be into it. I'll watch Cincinnati and Memphis play in a playoff game. I won't watch the Cows. I'd rather rip my eyeballs out than watch the Cows in the playoffs. But it's definitely going to be better than what it was.
I was discouraged by Ryan saying that things might be looking up over in Tampa, but at 1-8 last season, I guess nowhere to go but up, maybe. Is that?
I mean, he's
possibly.
He needs ratings. I mean, we got to get ratings up there. The Tampa Bay 10. He doesn't want to alienate everybody just yet.
No. Teased it off the top. Track and field championships going on now on ESPN2. 2 nights out in Eugene, Oregon. Freshman Ashira Collins in the triple jump, and earlier freshman Renaya Jones, who was on our show just a couple of weeks ago, finished at 12.85 on her run, and that was good for third. She advances to Saturday's finals. So good luck to her and Ashira as well. That going on right now on ESPN2. So we've still got some nights in that, and we wish them luck. We will continue to follow that all weekend long. I see Eric has posted, did you know Tom Selleck was, I did not know that. It's Eric who has put us to this test of grading the men's and women's sports
I don't want,
programs.
hold on. I actually want more Tom Selleck trivia if Eric has any of that to offer. I don't necessarily want to grade anything.
Well,
did you see Tom Selleck on the Friends reunion? He was getting up there in age. He's got to be in his 70s.
He does
right?
not, yeah, he did not look good. No, he did. Nobody looked good in that reunion. No.
Tom Selleck night here on the Sons of UCF Live. How we got on this path. But yeah, Eric, if you've got more Tom Selleck trivia, throw that our way. Adam will throw it up on the screen. But it is Eric who challenged us on this grading. We graded the men's sports last week. I got a little flack from you guys. I divided the list of the 10 women's sports so we could talk about 5 of them this week and 5 next week. It's summer content, right? Until I started digging in and went, how do you grade cross country exactly? But let's start off with women's basketball, Adam. NCAA tournament team for Coach Abe.
16-5 overall, 12-2 in the AAC, lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Man, I really wish they won that conference championship. Losing to the Cows in that final game was certainly a bit of a knee scraper. I felt like this team was poised to do a little bit more in the tournament. Obviously, a tough injury. Diamond Battles goes down, I think, early on in that game, which was definitely had an impact. I'm going to go with an A- on this one. I feel like they had... Yeah, I feel like they had a good squad. I think injuries kind of got them off the way. I know they kind of snuck into the tournament, and obviously a first-round loss is there. But I think you get a fully healthy team. I think they had a really good season. It's one of the better ones we've had in UCF women's basketball history. UConn finally being gone. Thank God UConn has left us. Opens a bit of a doorway. Hopefully this is an entree into future. I'm going to go A- for Coach Abe and the girls.
I'm going with a B only because I'm saving my A for conference champions. You win the conference, you get an A. This team played well, shared the regular season. We know the Cows with the technicality won the regular season, but we had our shot at them in the tournament and we lost to them. So for that reason, I dropped it to a B. And then getting into the tournament and not making any noise. We talked about the seeding. We were complaining about the seeding, and we just got blown out in that first game. A good season. There's nothing wrong with a B. You know, you come home with your report card full of Bs. Your mom will still let you go out that night. But, it's not an A. You got to win the conference to get an A.
So you're a guy that you have to win the conference championship to get an A, but the football team's going undefeated every year.
They got a D. They got a D in my seat for the last season.
In Mike's personal record book, there was a D there. That's correct.
I go with A. They don't get to go out at night, but some of the defensive players don't seem to heed those warnings. Anyway, I digress. A for women's basketball. Cheerleading, Adam.
They were my astute research showed they were the runner-up in nationals, and that they have been in the top 10 of what I don't know, but the top 10, 26 of the last 28 years. Linda Gooch is like an icon of coaching, but however, I think we're used to raising the big trophy here in the cheerleading program at UCF. Did not do that this year. So this is one where expectations kind of hurt you because I expected to be able to give out an A. I couldn't. I guess second place isn't bad overall since I just gave the basketball team an A- for not doing much. I can't go lower than that. So cheer gets an A- as well. But, I mean, they were an extra credit point away from being a B+ in my book.
You know, they finished number 2 in the country. I can't give them less than an A for that. The problem is, who finished number 1?
They didn't win the championship.
Not that they didn't win it, but it's the team that did win it.
Yes.
The Cows, which, by the way, the Cows beat us in women's basketball. They beat us in cheerleading. They beat us in baseball. I don't like what I'm seeing in this trend for this year. I know we won the War and I-4 battle against these guys, but in some of the biggest matchups of the year, they kind of got our number. It's still an A, cheerleading. Like you said, that has been our best sport overall for the last 10, 20 years since Gooch has been in charge. But it could have been an A+ if they had just edged out the Cows. Yeah, I'll keep it as an A.
I've got it as an A. Build Coach Gooch a statue on campus. Cross country. I don't see how we can grade it. I don't know how we can grade it.
Well, I mean, that's how you grade it, Trace. They had 2 tournaments based on my research. They finished first in the UCF Invitational. I don't know who else was there besides UCF. I assume that meant they invited somebody else.
Other schools.
And they were 5th in the AAC championship. Going by Mike's particular grading curve, if you don't win the championship, you can't get an A. So the A is out. They finished first in an invite of UCF. So I think, you know what? B's get degrees. I will give the cross-country team a B.
I am along with spoiler alert rowing coming up. I have no clue. I have no idea. You said you don't know how to grade it. I don't even know who's on. Can you name one person on the cross country team?
Full disclosure, You informed me a week ago that you didn't know how you were going to grade these teams and you wanted to punt on these programs. I insisted we divide this list. So you were clearly out front a week ago.
I'll give them a B- just because I don't know.
I've got them at a B. Women's golf.
I like how Trace doesn't have to give any context. We have to explain our answers. He just offers a grade and keeps it moving. Women's golf, two top finishes, I believe. I've looked at the schedule correctly. They did make the NCAA tournament. I don't believe they won a conference. So again, B's get degrees and the golf team gets a B.
I thought the women's golf team did win the conference. Maybe I got that wrong. No, nothing.
Yeah.
No, I don't think they won the tournament. No.
How about the regular season? We have the best record in the regular season.
I don't think there's a regular season. There's a conference.
What? There has to be a regular season
tournament.
Every team just goes straight to the tournament. I think maybe I looked at the wrong thing. I thought we had the best record, whatever it is, during. I'll call it the regular season during the season, and I wrote down A. I did this last week. I don't know. I have to go back and check.
Wow. Hey, I have them at a B with no context. Moving on to rowing out.
All right, rowing. I'm glad you came here for your rowing coverage. My astute research, I had a crack staff of people just tearing through records. Turns out we finished second in the AAC championship, which by my math does not make us first, which again, by my math, that's been now bestowed upon me from UCF Mike, means they're not eligible for the A. I don't think they did anything bad for the C. Nobody fell in the water as far as I know. I feel like we're good swimmers, safety first. Again, I'm going to give the rowing team a B.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I mean, do you know for a fact nobody fell in the water, or are you just guessing that nobody fell in it? It's possible.
I feel like it'd be it's not impossible. That's I'm not saying they didn't. I'm not saying they did though.
You said we finished second. Who finished first? Tell me it wasn't the Cows again.
I don't believe it was the Cows. I think it was SMU.
SMU.
All right, a little more acceptable. I'll go B+ then.
B+. I've got them as a B+. We match the matching game.
Are you writing these down, Trace? And for what purpose?
I'm writing them down to keep track. To keep track
of how
you've got homework.
Ludicrous we sound.
You've got homework for next week. The other 5 women's sports that we did not cover this week. I'll send you the list.
Softball, volleyball, tennis.
Softball, tennis.
Soccer.
Track and field, and soccer.
All right. Okay. Wow. That's a tough week. Okay. You couldn't have sprinkled a rowing in that week and given us a couple of things to work on here. Jeez.
I saved track for next week because we've got the ladies in the NCAA championship. See how that works. All right, let's get into the mailbag because we were running short of time. We only had a question or two last week. At Sublime_Night, if the CFP expands to 12 as rumored, does that mean UCF gets a shot, or does that mean Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson each get 2 bids?
Probably. I think the biggest the concern I have with this is, does this open the door for like a 9-3 Arizona State team to sneak in at number 12 over like a 10-1 Coastal Carolina? Look, the reality is if there's a committee involved in this still, and we've got, conference affiliations, we've got athletic directors from conferences, there's going to be tomfoolery. There's going to be a team or two that sneaks in there that probably doesn't belong. Ohio State's, both first and second string team both might get a bid. So I wouldn't be surprised if all those things happen. Hopefully it opens more doors for the quote unquote group of 5. But again, as I said off the top, skeptical Adam is definitely here to stay for right now.
Yeah, in order for this thing to pass, they're going to have to approve that Alabama gets a bye in the first round and has to lose twice in the tournament. And I can already see the Alabama fans going nuts the first time they lose in the second round or whatever it is. Oh, that team should have never even been in, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Tough break. You guys have had it long enough where you get the free pass in. I can't wait for this thing to expand. I can do without the committee. I could do it. I wish it was more of a you win your conference, you're in kind of thing. We're still fighting it out with the other lower G5 conferences to get in this thing. But it's not done yet. We'll see when the final paperwork comes out what the story is.
Do you want a committee or do you want computers?
I want you win a game like any other sport. If you win your conference, you're in. You win your division, you get to the conference championship. Something on paper that gets you in. I don't want to have to depend on computers or people or a committee.
How do you seed it, though? What's that? Is there going to be a human factor in the seedings?
The seeding, I guess, is a little different. Maybe you do something with the out-of-conference games. I don't know how you factor that in. That is a good question. I haven't thought.
Well, and then you mentioned something there. It's interesting now that this Danny White scheduling premise, which a lot of our fans are now trashing because it didn't work. Does that come back to bite us now, or is there opportunity there? I think that's going to be interesting how this plays out. Does it encourage some of these schools to schedule a tougher team in a UCF, or does it make finding teams down the line even harder for Terry Mahashan?
Or maybe they just got to do with the scheduling reform. Forget all these schedules 10, 20 years down the road. Now that things are changing, let's do that, what we've been talking about. The ACC plays a team from the American every year, and the SEC plays a team from the Sun Belt every year, and make it standardized so every team has an equal schedule at a conference.
Thomas DeOrio at DEIORIO_T. If the CFP expands to 12, over under the number of quote unquote G5 teams that are allowed in. His is 1.5. This is over under. I got to go under. Be lucky if they get the one in.
Yeah, I think you take the under on that one, Trace, for sure, because I think there will be a concerted effort to try to find more big schools in there, because the reality is this is still a TV show, right? I mean, you're still going to want. I think people will like the underdog darling situation, but I think the CFP will want to keep this more open. And if you're asking, honestly, I think this is less about the group of five and more about getting a Pac-12 team involved, getting that third SEC team in that we debate, getting that second Big 12 team in. And I think you'll see more of that stuff happen versus more of let's let the little guy in. So I think it'll be more of how do we get a Pac-12? How do we get a second Big 10, a third SEC? And I think that's where this probably leans, if I had to guess.
9 times out of 10, it's going to be one G5 team. There is going to be that year every once in a while, like we saw in 2020, where they'll get 2 in, and maybe the Pac-12 has the down year and their champion is only 7-5 or whatever it is, and maybe we can get an American and a Mountain West team in. But that's going to be far and few between, or few and far between. How's that? Yeah, that's how it goes.
Few and far between. Is there a more coveted spot than the 5 seed in this? What do you think? You like the 5 seed in this tournament? The 4 get the bye, and then 5. You're right there at 5th in these polls. And you're going to host a home game against the 12th seed.
Yeah, that's the sweet spot right there. 5 and 6. You get the home game, and then you don't even have to play the number 1 seed in the second round. You'll play against the 4 seed. So that's a nice little spot. Hopefully, that's where we find ourselves. But the good thing is, if we are even the 8 or the 9, I mean, unless you're the 8 or the 9, you don't have to play that number 1 seed the first round. So even if we're the 12 and we play the 5 and we win that game, then we're playing the 4 seed. It's not a little bit of an easier path.
Do you think this incentivizes Notre Dame to fully join the ACC?
I feel like Notre Dame's got such a level of arrogance about them that they feel like they can just do this without a conference. And so, again, this is just the first draft. I feel like Notre Dame's going to try to get a seat at the table and figure out a sort of a loophole way around this. Ultimately, I think it may have to be what they do, but I think they're going to resist at all costs. I think that just the arrogance of how Notre Dame works won't want them to kowtow to a conference.
Well, Notre Dame's never going to play in a conference championship game, so they're always going to have that weekend off. And if they're a team that's eligible for the playoffs, they're probably going to be that 5 or 6 or 7 seed. They're going to host a home game, so they're going to get that extra game every year. They may not care about being in a conference.
Yeah, they'll find some loophole though. I imagine they'll come up with something where if it's they're undefeated or an RPI type ranking and it's above X. Like I feel like there will be some sort of a Notre Dame exemption baked in here that will be for everybody, but it really be the Notre Dame rule.
Our friend Brian W. Peterson referencing the Cows. First, the championships were in the order. Wichita State had 1, Cincinnati had 1, SMU 2, Tulsa 3, Houston, the Cows, and UCF with 4 conference championships each. Brian's question, should we keep a closer eye on our rivals to the south/west?
Well, I mean, to be fair, a hammer and a nail don't have a rivalry, right? So, I mean, I think that's the first part about this. But listen, anytime you have a team that's close to you in geography, any rival game that comes up, you always keep an eye on it. We saw UCF got burned this year, and maybe that's a little bit of earned arrogance in terms of how much UCF's dominated these things going forward. So, I think particularly in some of these sports, baseball, cheerleading, like Mike talked about. You want to keep an eye on who's out there, and maybe this provides a little bit of a fire to it. The reality is they can't suck forever, right? Or can they? I don't know. I mean, at some point, they're even a blind squirrel finds a nut, and maybe that's what this year is.
You got to keep your eye on them. They are our closest rival, and like I mentioned a few minutes ago, they beat us in some championship games this year. Although we dominated the season, the I-4, they beat us when it counts. And women's basketball and baseball, I mean, they're 2 wins away from the College World Series. If they win this weekend, you can't just ignore it. So some people will tell you it's good for the conference. It's good for the rivalry. I hope they lose every single game they play in every sport. I'm never going to be in that camp with those other guys. But, they're getting better. Football, remember that game at the end of the year? We didn't dominate them. That was a back and forth kind of scary game that it should not have been, and hopefully this year it won't be either. But, you can't just ignore them.
I agree with you, Mike. I don't want them to. I don't want to see them win anything. If they're going to get better, though, in some of these other sports, as long as they don't improve in football, right? As long as UCF has the upper hand in football, and for multiple years now has won the War on I-4 trophy. All credit to them in baseball, women's basketball. They have been strong in a variety of sports for a number of years, but you got to keep dominating them in football. Not let them breathe in that. John asked, does it concern you that we are using up so many spots in the recruiting class on transfers instead of high schoolers? He says he thinks it's an indictment of the previous regime. He also thinks if the trend continues, UCF would be a very attractive landing spot for a player, much like free agency. I got to think that the sales pitch that Coach Malzahn has is stronger today with this announcement of this possible expansion of the playoff, because that's something that UCF struggled to make the case for, that it could get there. So again, with those leaners, that someone that might choose a Purdue or a Kentucky or a school like that over UCF, maybe you keep those kids at UCF because they may have a better shot, right, of getting into that top 12 through the Americans portal than they would at Purdue.
Listen, do not come here for a bunch of Josh Heupel defenders, but I will tell you that some of this is due to the one-time transfer rule, which was not in effect during the Heupel era. So I will at least give him that hat tip that he didn't have the same opportunity perhaps that Malzahn has right now. Am I concerned? I think I said this on a show previous. I'm like 95% okay with this, but I think there's a 5% unintended consequences that we need to keep an eye on. Will this be used against us in high school recruiting? Hey, don't go to UCF. They're going to recruit over you anyway and bring somebody else. Then, will this ruin relationship with high school coaches who are trying to give UCF players, and we're not taking those guys because we're looking in the portal? So could there be unintended consequences? For sure. We saw Kansas try this under the, I guess it wasn't Les Miles. It was the Charlie Weiss era where they tried to bring in nothing but JUCO transfers and it completely bottomed out their program. And then they still haven't recovered from that. So I think there is an area of concern, but the reality is this is really kind of maybe the first time we're seeing a school do this, where the transfer portal is becoming that new wave of getting student athletes. Do I think this will be a complete great news story? Probably, but I think there's a 5% unintended consequences that need to be considered.
This is a unique situation Gus walked into. A lot of times when you take on a new job, you do it right at bowl season. You're going to be the new coach. Yeah, in December, early January. He came here after signing day had already occurred. He couldn't recruit anybody. So he's using the transfer portal maybe twice as much as he normally will in the future. It is the way of the future. College football is headed that way. So it's something that he's going to have to do every year. I wouldn't expect as many as we've seen this year in the future. So I'm not concerned about it at all. And I think this weekend, starting now with the bounce house weekend coming in, we're going to see what he can do in the recruiting, traditional recruiting, and I think we're all going to be very happy with it.
I think that name, image, and likeness, and we've talked about it on this show, you've talked about it on the pod, is a real advantage for UCF. Again, back to that comparison with a Purdue and NC State. A kid like Dylan Gabriel can shine here with a chance possibly to make that playoff in a way in which a Wake Forest isn't or a Vanderbilt's not, right? And they can profit off of it. So I think he's got a lot of aces up his sleeve there. His name recognition, UCF's standing. We've talked about getting him back on campus after 15 months away because of COVID. He has a lot of advantages going in here, and with the changing college landscape, you have to roster manage. You're not going to keep everybody happy. I think they've done a good job not to lose too many kids. And when we looked at who they've lost so far to the transfer portal, which is no guarantee that they leave, it is kids that were not higher on the depth chart. So really they're going to have to prove themselves no matter which way they enter UCF. There's a lot that is happening all at the same time now. And name, image, and likeness goes into effect in Florida in just a couple of weeks. So I think he's got a lot of recruiting advantages. At Rejoice Knights, what's our kicker situation? It forced me to look up the roster. There's only one kicker on the roster. One Mr. Obarski is the only one officially on the roster right at the moment. We're getting the Appalachian State transfer, Riker Casey. It seems like there's going to be a battle there.
What's the kicker situation? Not good, Joyce. I think that's where we are. I think this is a clear shot that Obarski did not and has not really shined, unfortunately, in that role. Will he get it together? I don't know. I think we brought in, did we bring in a kid from Arizona State too, if I remember that correctly? I think we have a transfer coming in from there. Then we have Riker Casey, 2-point Trace. Competition going into the kicking game. I feel like best man wins the job on this one, but right now I'd say unsettled is our situation.
Casey does have experience. I think he's here for 1 year, right? He played 4 years already over there. He's a grad transfer.
Has never kicked a field goal.
Okay, but he's a kickoff specialist. He can kick the ball in bounds, from what I know. Something that we're not accustomed to.
That was a 2 year ago problem. In fairness,
We did it a couple times this year too.
I guess by the standard of 8, 2 years ago, the number was better. There were fewer games.
I think he did it in the Cincinnati game when we were trying to mount the comeback, but whatever it is, more competition, the better. And actually, I saw another video of some recruit that I think was here over the past weekend, kicking 60, 70-yard field goals off the tee or something. So hopefully it's something we can improve on. Hopefully it's not something that comes down to a kick too many times this year. It happened once last year. Maybe we don't even need one of those games this year. So
if he makes the kick against Memphis, are we as down on Daniel Obarski?
No.
No, such is the life of a kicker.
Yeah.
I mean,
And in fairness, if you tell me that they're going to score 49 points, you should win that game. So, right, he's not the reason that they lost, and they were up.
But if Javier Borleggi doesn't make that kick against Alabama, do we even remember him for anything other than just missing that kick? No. Do we don't remember him for anything other than just making that kick? So when you're a kicker, that's the way you got to take it.
So there's a chance for him to redeem himself and go down in the annals like Javier Borleggi with a game-winning kick in the college football playoff or something.
Oh, yeah, if he does that, he hits a game winner in the conference championship game. He hits a game winner against Boise on opening weekend. You know, a lot is forgiven.
All right, let's end the mailbag with @FatBeaker. That would be Nathan. If Adam and Mike are the sons of UCF, would I be the stepson of UCF? I don't really like that. I don't think I like that. Is there a better term?
I mean, there's a weird dynamic with that. There's a lot of odd thing. Mike obviously is going through some stuff. I don't know that's even an option these days. You know, I don't know. Let's open it up to the audience on how we sort of start. Is he a cousin? Is he crazy Uncle Trace? I mean, I'm open to whatever you guys think. Stepson doesn't feel right to me. But,
I don't. Yeah, that doesn't work for me.
You know, if he clearly seems to be a man wandering the streets. I mean, is he crazy Uncle Trace? I mean, I'll leave it up to you guys.
I made this analogy a few weeks ago. You talk about The Godfather. Tom Hagen, they picked him up off of the streets. He's the consigliere of the family now. I think that's what Trace is. He's the guy we go to when we need to make some big decisions. I mean, Adam is Michael. You want to call me Sonny? We need a Fredo. Now, if you know somebody that wants to be the Fredo of the Sons of UCF, you can find one of those.
That's a
casting. We're casting now.
Yeah, I'm not keen on stepson. I appreciate.
You want to be Fredo? I mean, you could be Fredo.
I don't know.
There's no small actors, Trace. There's no small parts either way.
I don't think we need to be talking about small parts on his family program. But
anyway,
we did talk about my vasectomy earlier this week on our show. So.
We did talk about that. Yes.
That would be episode 135. Which featured if you haven't heard it, it's new to you interview with Rashard Causey.
Yeah, Causey was a great interview back in the day and was even better again this time around. Fun guy. Again, probably not the most memorable name of UCF, but one of those guys who was always there and made plays when you needed to make plays. It was good to catch up with him. But Trace, I think the most important thing of the Big Three is we talked about the Big Three home and home series that we would like to see. Again, suspend all reality on schedules and open dates. Mike and I each had a list. I'll put that out on social media tomorrow for the vote. But Trace, we need your Big Three home and home series that you would like to see UCF enter into.
Oh, I thought you were going to have me vote on.
Well, you can do that too. Hey, you can just tell everybody mine.
What were your three again? What were your three again?
I had Auburn, Oregon, and Nebraska.
Yep, I had Notre Dame, Clemson, and LSU.
Notre Dame, Clemson. That's not bad. I don't know. My dream teams in that. I can pick from this list too, right? I don't have to pick three off this list, right?
No, do what you got to do.
I was not able to go to Doak Campbell when UCF played Florida State. I'd like to see Florida State be home and home. My sister and brother-in-law went to Florida State, so there's a healthy little rivalry there. So I would have, I'd have Florida State. Taking another one not on your list, I'd like to see Georgia be on the list. I think that'd be fun to have Georgia. And Tennessee.
Those are some good ones. I like that list too.
Not bad.
Tennessee.
Revenge for the rivalry between the Hedges game with Georgia, and it's also the rubber match. That was on the list too when I was trying to pick my third one. That was one of them. The Tennessee, obviously, we know the ties, and Florida State only lost once to them. I think right now, if we face them head to head, we'd have a good shot.
Trace, I must have missed your vote, by the way.
I'm sorry?
I missed your vote between Mike and I.
Oh, Auburn, Oregon, and Nebraska, Notre Dame, Clemson. Boy, they're good. They're good. Can I vote secretly? I've got to vote publicly. Let's see. I having been to Auburn and seen UCF play at Auburn, but not the other venues, and I need new stadiums, I will take Mike's list of Notre Dame, Clemson, and LSU.
There we go. I figured you'd pick that. I figured you'd be all in the LSU tailgate scene, Trace. I figured that'd be you.
Yeah, I just think that'd be a fun experience to go to a game, even if it didn't involve UCF.
Yeah, I mean, legendarily, it's one of the best tailgating sites and gets pretty crazy out there, especially a night game. We had Andrea Adelson on, and she said that was like the most interesting atmosphere she's been into as a stadium. So that's definitely not a bad choice.
And you're not even talking about Notre Dame, one of the most historical stadiums in the country.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing them in a 5-12 matchup here at the Bounce House a couple of years from now. All right, guys, it has been a news-making day this Thursday. Happy birthday, UCF, number 58. You guys will be back for episode 136. New guest or someone from the vault? Any tease there or TBD?
Yes.
What should we do?
Yes. A lot of emails are out there. A lot of moving parts.
I am well aware. I am well aware of the moving parts.
Expect a Joey Connors throwback.
We do more. I mean, I think people don't realize it is hard to book guests because it's just there's a lot of moving parts, and you got to fit it into when you're on. And in this show, it's 8 to 9. It's not 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. We appreciate Ryan Bass for hopping on. We hope to have Ryan Schneider next week. Hey, that might be an idea. You could pull him out of the vault and run him on the pod, and then we could have him live on Thursday. No pressure on Ryan to join us, but there's an idea. All right, guys, it has been fun. This has been the Sons of UCF Live this Thursday, June the 10th. Happy birthday, UCF. Good night, everyone. Trace Rolco, charge on.